Hello, this is Paul Chek. Today I thought I'd share some concepts about chaos and relationship in our lives. If we look at the current knowledge of chaos, of which there's now an entire branch of science called chaos science, which is based on chaos theory, we find that there's two kinds of chaos if you just break them down into their basic components. One is the chaos of entropy or disorder. The other is deterministic chaos. Examples of the first kind of chaos, or entropy, is just the natural breakdown of systems and transformation of energy in any system. So for example, if you look at the weather is a pattern that is governed by chaos, and it is actually best predicted with chaos mathematics. But the reality of it is we can't really predict the weather very far because there's too many patterns and influences involved. So there you see the weather is somewhat predictable, but really more unpredictable than predictable, because the entropic chaos requires or is a function of so many facets of the world and the environment, the universe, that we can't possibly calculate at all. Another way to look at the chaos of entropy is anything that you have that's new, whether it be a house or a car, in time always begins to break down, and that breaking down process is one in which we either get involved in or we don't get involved in. So your house either just progressively goes to shambles and loses value, your car goes to shambles and loses value, or you get involved in it. Then there's deterministic chaos. Now, some of you may be familiar, if I give you the concept of deterministic chaos, that there are now very neat art programs based on chaos theory, where using a mathematical equation, you can add a given number to a formula which produces what's called an iteration or a repetitive pattern. And it produces these wild and amazing images of fractals that many of us have seen now in various programs and textbooks and things like that. So in deterministic chaos, it means that there's something potentially breaking down, or something that has order that we cannot see because it's disguised by disorder. But just like that art program, if you change the numbers, which requires a conscious intention, and you then generate an image, you've changed the image. So what one form of chaos that produces a given pattern, we'll call it just the entropy of chaos, becomes deterministic when we get involved and change the formula, and then we become part of the formula. So one of the key lessons of today's talk is that whenever you stay with the chaos, you are part of the formula, and therefore you go from more of a possibility for deterministic chaos and less possibility for entropic chaos, or the natural breakdown of the environment or of structures or of relationships. So today what I wanted to do is just show you a simple model that I developed. It's part of my Chek 4-quadrant mastery coaching program, which is in the process of being put online as we speak here. And there's also more information that I'll share in the resources at the end. But my goal with my short presentation today is just to give you a framework to help you better understand what's going on in the universe, the world, and in our lives, and why it's important to understand these things so that you can choose to be involved in and include yourself in the equation. Because without including yourself in the equation, you have guaranteed that you will be part of the outcome either way. In other words, if you don't get involved, chaos takes its course. But if you do get involved, you influence the opportunity for chaos to be deterministic, to produce a better outcome. When you get involved with your broken down house and fix it up, you can sell it for a lot more money. That's deterministic. You've gotten involved. If you don't get involved, then you're going to probably spend a lot of time crying about how much money you lost because you didn't get involved, is what that boils down to. So let's take a look at a few key concepts here. First, if we get involved, we cannot be excluded from the equation. So that was what I mentioned earlier, but that's the key point. If you're involved, you cannot be excluded from the equation. This goes right to my ebook, The Last 4 Doctors Will Ever Need How to Get Healthy Now, where I show you in my 1, 2, 3, 4 formula, number 3 is 3 choices. The optimal, which is best for everyone on your dream team. The suboptimal, which is usually a choice that gives instant gratification but causes problems in dream team relationships or amongst the people supporting you. Option number 3 has a negative component, doing nothing. Doing nothing is still a powerful choice because you've chosen not to choose. So if you do nothing, you exclude yourself from the possibility of creativity. The positive use of doing nothing is to gather more information as needed to make an intelligent decision, which would mean you're now engaged in deterministic chaos. You're in a state where you have to make a choice of some kind, but you're getting involved, gathering the information, and doing some of the things I'll share here. So to start off, I'm going to take you through a series of diagrams to help you put this together conceptually in your mind. The soul is represented as a circle with a dot in the middle. So we have 2 concepts, the world soul, which means in philosophy, or the philosophy of Plotinus, the soul of the universe, the world here being an expansive term to include things that transcend the world itself, to include the universe. And then it's also a model for the individual soul. The soul, by definition, is a field of action which consciousness is produced by living awareness of opposites. So in a human being, and even at a bigger layer, you could say, because we have a concept called the superconsciousness, there's a living awareness of opposites. You could say that if there was no living awareness of opposites at the cosmic level, then there would be no impetus for the opposites. In other words, because they're here, we can surmise that there must be some living awareness, just like if we see archaeological digs where foundations are in the shape of a square, we can say there was some living awareness of the function of a square. Okay? So the soul then is a field of action in which we are able to have living awareness of opposites, which is a prerequisite for consciousness. Next, we step down. You notice that I've created the Tai Chi symbol. Now, that's the same symbol, but now it shows you the complementary opposites of the male and female. The energy of the masculine divides, the energy of the feminine multiplies power. So the sun shares its energy in every direction, therefore its power is divided by every possible point that it can move in a sphere. And then yin energy is multiplied. So when a woman's pregnant, her energy is multiplied, brought into her center, and yin expands from its center. Okay? So these 2 forces are constantly complementary, yet they are in opposition. You have to kill something, masculine energy, to eat it, so therefore you have divided the herd. If you kill an animal, for example, or you've divided the fruit of the garden or the tree, but then you have to eat it and then multiply that energy into sustenance and energy for your body. So there's always a constant interplay between the outgoing of the male force and the ingoing of the feminine force. And if we don't understand that process, then life can be much more confusing because we don't realize what's going on. Now, one of the things I'm sure you're aware of is that when human choice gets involved, if we divide too much but don't replenish, then we increase the likelihood of entropy. And you could say the unconsciousness of those choices is in itself deterministic, but not in the deterministic means that we would prefer. In other words, we run out of resources, for example. So Tai Chi represents complementary opposites. Potential is 0. So here you're dealing with the point of emergence or potential and the sphere of the interaction of potential or the field. 0 is the same as unconditional love. If you want to use love as the model, 0 and unconditional love are functional equivalents. And it is the interaction of these two complementary forces that produces life force, and it is also the source of what we know of as our mind, and psyche means soul. So the soul is inclusive of all levels because you have both a body, you have emotions, and you have a conscious mind and unconscious mind, and you have a field of perception. So all of those are components of the soul. Now we go down to universal current. So what this shows you is that at the level of the world soul or the universe, these two forces are at play constantly as creation. You could call that yin, and destruction. You could call that yang, although those two can be flipped over. You can use them either way as long as the context is clearly stated. Fire is yang, it's destructive, but it's also creative if you use it to cook your food. So if you're cooking food with fire, you could easily claim it was yin, but if your house is on fire, it would be yang. So now when we get to the universal current, if you study world religion, you'll find that all world religions have what's called the equivalent of a holy trinity. So in Christianity, since most of you would be familiar with that, 0 would be the equivalent of Father. The negative pole would be the Son, which the Son, i.e. Jesus, or something with a body, and then Spirit would be the Holy Ghost. If we break this down, you can be Brahma, Shiva, Krishna, however you want to break these things down, Vishnu, Shiva, Brahma. There's many ways to look at this. But if we break it down just into something simple like an electrical circuit, 0 equals pure potential or unconditional love. The negative element of the circuit is matter, which would be the negative pole on your battery, the one with the black wire. Spirit would be the positive pole, and so what you see as potential is extracted and it moves through a circuit to create life force energy and movement. And movement is the underlying principle of life itself. So this trinity here is the basic energy in which all creation manifests. So if we look at how this plays out, we see, for example, that stars, planets, moons are all born. And they represent order. You can see the planets in our solar system, they have an orbital order. We have an orbital order as we move through the galaxy in our 25,900 year cycle as identified in the Mayan long count, for example. And they are constantly transformed, and you could say they die in chaos. Stars explode, and their previous order or entropy becomes, negentropy or order becomes chaos or entropy, and then they're absorbed into the field of creativity once again. So the point that I'm making here that's setting us up for the next stage is that this process of creation and destruction, or birth as creation and death as transformation or chaos, is going on all the time. And as the old saying goes, the minute you're born, you begin to die. So everything that's created has, you could say, chaos or entropy chasing it everywhere it goes. And through conscious awareness, for example, choosing to eat better, choosing to follow the 4-doctor model that I teach, drink water, get to bed on time, you actually inject determinism into chaos. You can reduce how rapidly your cells die. You can reduce your resting heart rate, your resting breathing rate. In other words, you can minimize the natural forces of chaos by being in relationship, which then is deterministic. And you can also use conscious awareness to get involved in a positive way when you see destruction. For example, Arthur Young, in his book, The Reflexive Universe, if I remember right, or one of his lectures that I've seen, It's been too many things I've studied to remember, but he makes a very good important point. He says, a long time ago, there was a bunch of people who had animals in a barn, and the barn got hit by lightning and caught on fire. And inside the barn was a bunch of pigs. But as they were cleaning up the mess, one of the people actually had the idea, as they looked at these roasted pigs on the ground, to take a taste, and they cut a chunk of pig off the animal and tasted it, and it tasted fantastic. In fact, they all tried it and thought it was amazing. So what happened was chaos hit the barn, killed the animals, but by conscious awareness and getting involved, someone realized the pig tasted good. So they went from having the barn burned down to now starting controllable fires and roasting pigs. So you see, the lightning strike is the chaos that is inevitably part of the process of creation in all life. But being aware and getting involved meant that you don't have to light your barn on fire every time you want some roasted pig. You've already learned that lesson, so by being creative, you can put some pig in a barbecue pit, and you can use chaos in order to create creativity and meaningful order that sustains you or nourishes you. So there's a simple example of how consciousness or awareness can take you from non-deterministic chaos to deterministic chaos. I choose to light a fire to cook one pig instead of ruining them all and losing my barn. Okay? So now when we take these concepts to the next stage, we see our soul, the point and the circumference, which would represent the yin and the yang polarities that you see over here. And then we go into the square of containment, which shows the 4 cycles through which our energy moves through, whether we're conscious or unconscious. If we're unconscious, these energies manifest in the universe always. So this would be spring, summer, fall, winter. You could say they can be 4 cardinal points, north, south, east, and west. So that key number 4 is involved in any process from beginning to completion. Now, number 1, as we're looking at it, relates to 1, if there's chaos in my life, if things are falling apart out of order, my relationship's falling apart, or I'm not satisfied in my work, or I keep running out of money, or my car's broken down and I can't rely on it, any number of such things, the first step we've got to do in this process is equivalent to Hegel's thesis stage, which means to have an idea. You must be conscious. In my system, that means, what is your dream, goal, or intention? The instant that you have a dream, goal, or intention, then you've just created a relationship with chaos. And just like you can change the art that appears on the computer image by changing the mathematical equation, once you're involved in any chaos, you become part of the formula. So your consciousness is in the formula, and that means you can participate. That doesn't mean you're always going to get the outcome you want, but it means that you are at least being democratic and putting your vote into the formula. Okay? So we go from having the idea, which we could call the dreaming stage, I'm dreaming of how to solve this problem or what I want, to the action, which is the antithesis. So here the question is it chaos or chaos and disorder? My relationship's breaking down. What am I going to do about it? If I'm going to do nothing, there's the action that you've taken. This is the action stage right here. So action. Here we run into the antithesis. The antithesis might be my roof is leaking on my house, but I don't have the money to fix it. There's always some form of resistance to the flow of energy and to the flow of consciousness. Otherwise, as a working concept, if there was no resistance to the flow, then you wouldn't have time. If everything appeared instantly, then time wouldn't be a reasonable concept. And without time, we would have no basis for experience. If your entire life was lived that quick, you'd have no experience of it. So At this stage, once we have our dream, regardless of what the challenge is, we are going to get involved, but there's inevitably going to be an antithesis. You might have a relationship situation where you don't feel like you're getting enough sex, so you might go to your partner and say, I need more sex to feel whole in this relationship, and they may say, well, to be honest with you, I'm not feeling well right now. My doctor says I have adrenal fatigue, that I work too much, and my sex drive will come back once I get myself healthy enough, and I need your support in that time. So, in other words, your antithesis is you're not going to get the instant gratification you hope for just because you put yourself into the formula. So here we have to go to choice, which means that we're making chaos more deterministic. That brings us to awareness and self-inclusion, which means we're having a relationship no matter what it is, the house, the car, the bank account, the lover. Then we go to the synthesis stage. Once we get ourselves involved in the relationship and use conscious awareness to try to resolve the imbalance in this natural field of tension created by the male and the female, or the yin and yang polarities in all situations, then we will get the fruit of that synthesis. So if you say to your partner, oh wow, I didn't realize, I'm glad you shared that with me, how can I support you? And just work with that relationship, then the synthesis will bear fruit. Maybe 6 months from now, your partner's health is better, their sex drive is better, and you learned that a little abstinence made the love more exciting and the sex more exciting when you participated in the process of healing that challenge authentically. If you don't participate and you just continue on your normal unconscious course of throwing temper tantrums or threatening to have sex somewhere else or whatever it might be, well, you're really caught in, shall we say, the chaos of the breakdown of any of the things that exist in the universe, whether it be a star, a moon, a planet, or a barn that's on fire from getting hit by lightning. Okay? So once we're at the synthesis stage and we've accumulated, we've made it through the challenge stage of the action stage where we meet the resistance of reality, then we see what we've produced. Then we go to the stage 4, which is the rest, energize, and reflect stage. And here's where intuition, clarity for new dream relationship emerges. The 4 is specifically 4 because you always have to look at your values. What is your dream? How will I support that with diet, quiet, and movement? Who's on my dream team, and how do I interface with those people so we're all in harmony? So some tips then is whenever you're experiencing chaos in your life, number 1, stay connected. The biggest thing in our culture is as soon as there's a little chaos, you run to a doctor or to a drugstore, you knock it out. You can call the headache the chaos, give me a pill, but then you don't have a relationship with the headache, and if you don't have a relationship with the headache, you're not paying attention to what choices you're making in relationship to food, environment, self, etc. that led to the headache. So the chaos, even though you take the pill, continues, and the next thing you know, instead of a headache, you got a brain tumor because you didn't pay attention and didn't ask good questions. So you did not get yourself involved in the equation. You chose not to participate, so the equation ran itself out, so to speak. 2, don't rush. We're in an instant gratification culture. Everybody wants everything instantly. They want their food instantly. They want their money instantly. Amazon tries to deliver packages instantly. I wouldn't doubt if they start buying electron transport science so they can make your product materialize for you, which would be less greenhouse gases, so we'll hope for that. But we're really making ourselves very dysfunctional by all this instant gratification because we're not paying attention to the cost of that instant gratification, not only to the environment, but to our own spirit. There's something very, very deep and spiritual about working to grow your own food, slaughtering your own animal, cutting your own grass, trimming your own trees, choosing to take care of yourself. I remember one time I was at a client's house and he had a toilet that would wipe his bottom for him. So, you know, when you go to the level of not participating, that you have a machine that'll wipe your bottom, think of all the things that you miss out on, such as all of a sudden maybe you have a lump down there, but the machine's not going to tell you that. Okay? So don't rush. Consciousness needs a field of opposites to create the tension through which psyche gains energy, and without that flow of conscious awareness, we can't be aware of anything. We might as well be a rock, as a metaphor. Next, and probably one of the most important, is listen to your heart. The head, you could say, is the yang of the heart's yin. Listen to your gut. The heart integrates the instincts of the gut with the intellectual mind, and it has a function of creating distribution of tension across a field like a wheel. Your heart is what integrates the spokes, the hub, and the rim of the wheel. If the heart's involved, metaphorically, if the wheel hits a bump, the shock is distributed through all 28 or 32 spokes and the rim. Therefore, the load is distributed evenly and the wheel works. But if the wheel's out of balance and you hit a rock or a bump or edge of a curb or something, it damages the rim, breaks spokes, and then you are disintegrated. So if you only listen to your gut's probably just going to mirror your head. If you only listen to your head, you lose the wisdom of the unconscious mind, which is about 4 million times more powerful than the conscious mind. But if you listen to all three and let the heart make the final decision, you become like a well-balanced wheel, and you can roll through life with a lot less damage. Number 4 is invite feedback, particularly from others, and your personal unconscious. Your personal unconscious holds the solutions to all sorts of problems that our conscious mind doesn't have. Remember, the ego is only about 7.5% of what we call conscious. So if you imagine an iceberg, of which about 93% is underwater, the part of ourselves that we are aware of ourselves with and think is who we are is really just the 7% sticking up out of the water. And research shows that the unconscious mind, if you look at Bruce Lipton, Joe Dispenza, and people like that, they show that the unconscious mind is about 4 million times more powerful, but we, in our culture, tend to avoid it, and the way you get into that is to access your personal unconscious through practices of meditation, which in my system include things like working in or dynamic meditation or zone exercises, as I share in my book, How to Eat, Move, Be Healthy. I'm going to give you exercises that help you target specific challenges in your body, and I show you how they correlate to specific mental, emotional challenges. And then we want to look at the natural events in our lives. For example, if you're having a situation in your life, maybe a relationship problem, and then the water heater blows in your house, and then the next thing you know, you're driving to work and your car overheats, and the next thing you know, you're at work and the toaster oven catches on fire, you're seeing that the collective unconscious is mirroring things back to you. Most people wouldn't have 3 fires emerge in a very short period of time in their life. So some might call that just random chance, but if you pay attention to the patterns, and I've done this with many, many people, you see the patterns often mirror back to us what's going on inside of us. And the reason a lot of people don't buy into that is because they don't think that their contribution to the totality of all this is meaningful. If you realize that your energy can either disrupt the whole room or disrupt the whole garden or disrupt the whole world, all you got to do is look at one person, Hitler. His energy was disruptive to the entire garden that we call humanity and the planet. So when you don't realize your power, then these things seem like random events, and science would tell you there's no connection. But somebody who's more spiritually evolved or who has studied these things can say, yes, they are involved. Okay? So we want to stay connected. We don't want to rush. We want to listen to the heart. integrate the thoughts of the head and the instincts of the gut. We want to invite feedback from our body. What is your body telling you? What is your digestion, your elimination, your skin, your breathing, your blood pressure, all of these things? What are they telling you? And all you got to do is pay attention to those things when you put yourself into a perceived scenario of, if I was to get this job, or if I was to do this with my car, how does that feel when I allow myself to be present with that choice? And your symptoms generally will get worse or better. And if you listen to that, that's a valuable source of information. Our personal unconscious we can access through meditation, because that's very important, because that's where our shadow lives. And if our shadow is everything we don't like about ourselves, and it also carries positive potential, such as the potential to change. And when we come into contact with our shadow, we often have an opportunity to see why we have these rigid thoughts that we have. And it gives us a chance to once again develop a relationship with the chaos inside of us and help it become deterministic. And finally, look at the natural events around you as they relate to you. So that's my mini little lesson there on chaos and relationship in our lives. If you want some resources, PPS Success Mastery Lesson 1 shows you how to go through the process of identifying what is your either your most important dream, goal, or objective right now in your life, or your legacy, which is your overarching dream for your life. And it shows you how to look into the past challenges that may have left unconscious wounds in you or conscious wounds in you, and gives you a means by which to put them into context, so that now, instead of them pulling your strings unconsciously, you can become part of the chaotic factor that produces determinism, or an intended outcome. PPS, by the way, it also shows you the 10 key components of a dream, which are essential to know, where you always have something missing. PPS Lesson 2 is self-management. It shows you how the mind gets programmed, the science of brain programming or brainwashing, and how to use that basic science and other key things to manage yourself effectively. PPS Lesson 3 is the science of goal setting. PPS Lesson 10 is the great polarities, which goes into how these polarities work with each other, but if you're not aware, it looks like they're working against each other. PPS Lesson 12 is sacred listening, and sacred listening really helps us when we invite feedback. We listen to our heart, and we go into meditation. So those are very important, and it even helps you understand when the environment's talking to you. Then we have my 1, 2, 3, 4 for overcoming addiction, obesity, and disease, which comes with 9 hours of audio, and it takes you through a process to look into yourself and understand more about the nature of how love works in your life and how you can use that knowledge to heal addiction, obesity, or disease. My book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, allows you to do questionnaires that identify where your body systems are under stress or how much stress you have, and then gives you diet and lifestyle modifications to lower the stress and bring you into harmony. My book, The Last 4 Doctors You'll Ever Need, How to Get Healthy Now, is a multimedia ebook, and it shows you how to understand the 4 doctors, how to create dream affirmative core values for each of the 4 doctors, which is your code for knowing when to say yes and when to say no. So those resources can help you, and I hope you've enjoyed this. So the key thing is, remember, if you take yourself out of the equation, don't complain, and you might miss the opportunity to taste the pig when the barn's burning down because you're sleeping. And don't rush, and do what most people don't do. Pay attention to what your body's saying, listen to what your heart's saying, get feedback from other people and the environment. It's not usually hard to find someone who's been through most of the challenges we've gone through and navigated it successfully. That makes them a wise person in that regard. And if we do all that together, which now is a very good time in the history of man to do for a lot of reasons you've heard me talking about on my blogs, then you actually begin to trust the life process, and instead of feeling like you're being tormented or destroyed or threatened, you come to an interesting realization, and that is that you are being guided. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Chek once again. I'll talk to you sometime soon.